Yes, dear students. So once again, good morning to all of you. So we started with the poem that is Fire and Ice, written by Robert Frost. So just a quick revision, recap of the first stanza that we discussed yesterday. So we find that how the poet, he is dealing with the age-old question of whether the world will end in fire or in ice. So he shares the belief of the people, that how people debate over things, right? That how things that exist, they will end sooner or later. And he's talking about the two different beliefs regarding the end of this material world. What is this two different material? One is that the world, it will end in fire, and some other groups say that it will end in ice. So the world will be reduced to a fireball in the end. There are others who think that the world will end in ice, freezing all kinds of life into death and destruction. So in the opening lines, he's talking about how people debate on the issue that whether the world will be consumed by fire or frozen by ice. So he is actually talking about that how these two things, ice and fire, they are opposites of one another. And people also have entirely opposing views on this apocalypse, on this end of the world thing. If we talk about the ice and fire, how poet relates it to represent the two extremes on a grand scale, on a larger scale, that how these two can cause immense damage and thus are a befitting metaphor for harbingers, for being the harbingers of death and destruction. So how he relates to fire here? He equates fire with desire, greed, lust, rage. Please mark these words. These are very important, right? All the emotions of anger, jealousy, disgust, contempt, uncontrolled desire, the unbridled desire, greed, conflict, fury, lust, intolerance, avarice. These are all related to, associated with fire. And he then adds to it. In the first stanza, we see that how poet, he sides with those who believe that this world will end in fire. वो उनका साथ दे रहे हैं जो इस बात को मानते हैं कि ये दुनिया जो है किस वजह से खत्म हो जाएगी, ये पूरा संसार आग के गोले में सिमट कर रह जाएगा और खत्म हो जाएगा. And thus he says these two very powerful elements of nature, that is, he relates it to human emotions and human behaviors. ये दो जो चीज है, fire और ice, he has symbolically taken these two images to represent two extreme human emotions. So fire is symbol of human passion, the human uncontrolled desire. So iske saath you can add all these words: anger, jealousy, contempt, lust, intolerance, avarice, etc. And we see that how poet says, he confesses, from what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. That he himself has tasted of desire. उन्होंने खुद इस तरह की जो डिजायर्स हैं, जो इच्छाएं हैं, उनका सामना किया है. ये ने बेलगाम इच्छाएं कहते हैं, अनब्रिडल्ड पैशंस हैं. वो कहते हैं कि he is quite aware of the potential of these unbridled passions, the fire of causing death and destruction. Yesterday when the session ended, I was giving examples from the history, that how people's desire, the desires of kings, it had actually caused the end of dynasties, empires, everything had been destroyed. And we see those things, that how it had caused a large scale destruction in the past. सो पोइट इस बात को मानते हैं कि किस तरह से ये जो अग्नि रूपी हमारे अंदर इच्छाएं होती हैं, जो एक्सट्रीम लेवल ऑफ अनकंट्रोल्ड पैशंस हैं, डिजायर्स हैं, ये एक कारण बन सकती हैं मृत्यु का, पूरे दुनिया की बर्बादी का। तो वो मानते हैं कि यस, समवेयर वी फाइंड द पोएट्स इंक्लिनेशन towards those who believe that world will definitely come to an end because of fire. I hope yahan tak clear hai. Now we will move to the second stanza. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Suffice का मतलब होता है to be sufficient enough. Now poet says कि if it had to perish twice, it here refers to the world, the earth. अगर इस दुनिया को दोबारा अगर बर्बाद होना होगा, I think I knew enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Now here, अब वो ice का example ले रहे हैं. So he says, no doubt fire can bring an end of this world, but if this world has to be destroyed twice, then he says that ice can serve that purpose quite well. So how he refers ice, how he compares ice, that which is opposite to fire, and ice represents hate. वो कहते हैं कि ice जो है वो hate है, insensitivity है, कोल्ड एंड इनडिफरेंट एटीट्यूड है. ये जो कोल्ड और इनडिफरेंट एटीट्यूड होता है लोगों का, वो इस नफरत को जन्म देता है. जैसे बर्फ जो है हमारे हाथों को, हमारी बॉडी को सुन्न कर सकती है ना. सो बर्फ के स्वभाव को उन्होंने किससे कंपेयर किया है? नफरत से तुलना की है. सो वो कहते हैं कि जो बर्फ है ना, वो भी इक्वली केपेबल है, पोटेंशियल है, उसमें पोटेंशियल है इस दुनिया को तबाह करने के लिए. तो ये जो ठंडी और बर्फीली तर्क शक्ति है ना, वो आइस उसका प्रतीक है, सिंबल है. और कवि कहते हैं, द पोएट सेज दैट द आइस व्हिच स्टैंड्स फॉर कोल्ड एंड ice reasoning, and he compares it to hatred, and he says that it is sufficient enough to bring an end to this world. Hate which is born of cold reasoning makes a man insensitive to feelings. ये जो कोल्ड हमारी जो एटीट्यूड है दूसरों के प्रति, जो हमारी जो एम्पैथी ना शो करने की जो भावनाएं होती हैं, ये जो आइस है वो सब कुछ खत्म कर देता है हमारे अंदर, और हम इतने इनसेंसिटिव हो जाते हैं दैट वी स्टॉप एक्टिंग. और मनुष्य जो है वो संवेदनहीन हो जाता है, वो एम्पैथी को खो देता है, वो दूसरों के लिए एफर्ट्स करने बंद कर देता है. और इससे क्या होता है? इंसानियत हमारे अंदर से खत्म हो जाती है. तो जब हमारे अंदर इंसानियत मर जाती है तो किस चीज के लिए जगह बचती है? इट इज ऑल हेट्रेड. सिर्फ नफरत हमारे अंदर रह जाती है, और नफरत हमारे दिमाग को सुन्न कर देती है. इट बिकम्स आवर माइंड, the thinking ability, the ability of acting and responding to situation is completely destroyed. So these cold thoughts, the reasoning, make us insensitive, and thus we become cruel. So the poet, he says that the ice, the hate, can be a strong cause for the destruction of this world. Ice or hatred will be sufficient to bring an end of this world. So ice को किससे कंपेयर करते हैं? Insensitivity, the coldness, the indifference which gives rise to hatred, cruelty, rigidity. क्योंकि इन सभी वजह से क्या होता है? The humans, they are devoid of human feelings. हमारे अंदर से वो जो इंसानियत है वो completely खत्म हो जाती है. So we see that how the poet, he equates the ice with the emotions of coldness, insensitivity, selfishness, rigidity. So he believes, he says in the concluding stanza, that if fire somehow wasn't enough to destroy the world entirely, then ice could manage that thing quite well. Ice is equally dangerous and destructive. it is something that would chill the world, slow it down, isolate each individual enough that the human race simply could not survive it. So the potential of ice will be sufficient to destroy the world. So even though the speaker tends to believe in the destructive power of desire, that is fire, he sees no reason to believe that hate could not end the world just as easily. So in the first stanza, we see that how the poet supports the people who favor the fire. जो मानते हैं कि यस फायर इज केपेबल ऑफ डिस्ट्रॉइंग द वर्ल्ड, बट वो कहते हैं कि आइस की एबिलिटी को भी वो नकार नहीं सकते हैं. ये जो आइस है, ये जो इनडिफरेंट एटीट्यूड है लोगों का, ये जो लोग संवेदनहीन बनते जा रहे हैं, इनसेंसिटिव होते जा रहे हैं, इसकी वजह से उनके अंदर से इंसानियत खत्म होती जा रही है और ये इक्वली डेंजरस है, डिस्ट्रक्टिव है, क्योंकि ये जो कोल्ड एटीट्यूड है ये बहुत बुरा है. So thus what we find here, what we see, that how poet ने इस वर्ल्ड को एक मेटाफर के तौर पे यूज किया है फॉर रिलेशनशिप, फॉर ह्यूमन ट्रेड्स एंड इट्स इफेक्ट. कि किस तरह से ह्यूमंस के जो इमोशंस हैं वो एक्सट्रीम रूप लेते हैं. अगर वो फायर का रूप लेते हैं तो कैसे डिस्ट्रक्शन होती है, अगर आइस का रूप लेते हैं तो भी कम डिस्ट्रक्शन नहीं होती है. So thus, through this poem, the poet is actually giving a powerful warning, and he is leaving it up to the readers what they want to do next in their life. He's not giving any particular message, clear message. He's leaving everything up to the readers. So this message is just a warning which is conveyed indirectly through the metaphors of fire and ice, through the symbolism of fire and ice. That how both these negative forces are threatening the world. So the poet, how he thinks that if the world does not perish, get destroyed, die in fire, it will probably perish in ice. So the world will have to be saved from both fire and ice, and he leaves it up to the readers to decide what they want to do, how they are going to survive themselves from fire and ice. So before we move on to the further interpretation, is there any other doubt? You can unmute and ask me. You can raise hand even. I hope the poem is very clear, very small, very powerful usage of the words to convey the theme of the poem. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So just a quick summary, what we have read, that how fire and ice is a strong symbolic poem. Fire is used as the emotion of desire and ice that of hatred. Not only desire, it is uncontrolled, the unbridled desire. So the poet has used the idea of two groups who have their own possible explanation for the end of the world in the beginning lines. And both the components are compared with self-destructing human emotion, desire and hatred. So metaphor of fire and ice is used to explain. The poet is originally of the opinion that he has been very closely associated with the fiery desires and considered it capable of bringing human beings on the verge of destruction. In the first stanza, we find the inclination of the poet towards fire. How he says that he himself has experienced this fiery desires. And thus, he also supports those who believe that someday the world will end in fire. So he considers fire as most competent for destruction. But then he thinks that icy hatred is just as capable of ruining humans through slowly and steadily. आइस का इम्पैक्ट ग्रेजुअल होता है. So gradually it will definitely bring destruction to humans. So if earth was to end twice, अगर धरती 2 बार खत्म होने को होती, ice would be just as good as fire. So if fire would lead to rapid destruction, ice would lead to silent damage. बर्फ जो ice effect है वो धीरे धीरे सब कुछ खत्म कर देगा. So if fire is pure passion, ice is pure reason. The cold reasoning, the indifference attitude, giving birth to indifferent attitude, giving birth to hatred. So this poem is very artistically, it underpins the philosophy that we let our emotions rule us. And if we don't control them, will surely bring us all on the verge of chaos. हमारी जो emotions हैं, जो extreme emotions of fire and ice हैं, that needs to be controlled. We cannot just release them. उन emotions को control करना जरूरी है. And he leaves it to the readers how they are going to do that, because if we don't do that, then we will be on the verge of chaos. हमारे पास कुछ भी नहीं बचेगा, सब कुछ खत्म हो जाएगा और इस धरती से इंसानों का नामो निशान तक मिट जाएगा. Let's very quickly discuss the poetic devices used in the poem. The very first one is anaphora. अब ये device आपके लिए नया है. Anaphora क्या होता है? When a particular word is repeated in the lines they begin with particular words. जैसे आप देखिए stanza 1 में some say the world, some say in eyes, some say से ये जो 2 lines शुरू हो रही हैं. So यहाँ पर हमें repetition नहीं यूज करना है. We give this poetic device the term anaphora. So the line opens up with these words, some say, and this repetition of words यहाँ पर जो है इसे हम कहते हैं anaphora. Is it clear? Then metaphor and symbolism, fire and ice compared to strong passion and hatred respectively. Fire, strong uncontrolled passion, and ice, hatred. इमेजरी होती है, इमेजेस का यूसेज. हमने यहाँ कौन सी इमेज ली है? फायर की इमेज है, ice की image है, and they have their deeper meaning. So fire means feeling of burning desire, ice means the coldness of hatred. Then the poet has also used alliteration. Sir sound and the first sound is repeated in some say, favor, fire. So alliteration क्या होती है? When the consonant sound is repeated in a particular line. So here some say the sir sound is repeated. Favor, fire, the first sound is repeated here. Enjambment होती है the continuation of thought without punctuation marks in between the lines. अब आप देखिए जो first stanza है उसमें जो lines हैं वो continuation में है. And from fire what I have tasted of desire I hold with those who favor fire. So ये जो line में thought continue हो रहा है यहाँ कोई punctuation mark नहीं है. Then in second stanza I think I know enough of fate to say that for destruction eyes is also great and would suffice. इन 3 लाइनों में देखिए कोई punctuation नहीं है. एक है antithesis. Antithesis कहते हैं जब 2 contradictory ideas को use किया गया. जैसे fire and ice का idea जो use किया गया है that is antithesis. Fire and ice एक दूसरे को contradict करते हैं और दोनों ही example ली गई है एक particular concept that is the destruction of the world को express करने के लिए. Now there is a particular rhyme scheme in the poet. What is the rhyme scheme? आइए हम देखते हैं. Some say the world will end in fire if we name it A, then ice is B. Then the word desire is rhyming with fire, that is, it becomes A. So here we get A, B, A. Then again it is desire is rhyming with fire, so it is B. Then we find twice again, sorry, it is A, then here it is B, which is twice is rhyming with ice. Then we find a different here. It is hate. Hate जो है आगे किसी भी word से rhyme नहीं कर रहा है, so we get a C here. So this way you will keep on placing the alphabets, and what rhyme scheme do we get? We get A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. You can write it down. these alphabets with all the lines there, you will get A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. This is the rhyme scheme in the poem. Next is personification. Personification is to give human qualities to inanimate objects, and in this poem, fire and ice are capable of destruction. So the poet has personified here ice and fire by giving them the mind and power to destroy things. उन्होंने क्या किया है? जो डिस्ट्रक्शन क्रिएट करने की एबिलिटी होती है, पावर ऑफ माइंड होती है सोचने की, he has given these two qualities to fire and ice, so that way he has personified. एक और poetic device है, and that is assonance. It is the repetition of the vowel sound in same line. So what we find is the long sound O is repeated in this line. I hold with those who favor fire. So this O sound is repeated. The vowel O, its sound is repeated here in this line. I hold with those who favor fire. Okay, so these are the poetic devices used in the poem, and this is all about the poem, that is Fire and Ice. Yes, students, so let's quickly discuss the few questions. Those are here in the poem. There are many ideas about how the world will end. So do you think the world will end someday? Have you ever thought what would happen if the sun got so hotter that it burst and grew colder and colder? So this we have already discussed in the beginnings. You also have shared your opinions there, that how some of you supported that world will end in fire, some supported that how world will end with the eyes. So this way it is totally your question, and you should cite examples taken from the poet, how poet has shared his opinion to justify your answer by taking support from the poem, quoting some of the lines here. Okay? Now a very quick activity for Frost. What do fire and ice stand for? Here are some ideas. So side by side, you can start by categorizing it. इनको किस कैटेगरी में डालोगे? If we talk about greed, तो इसे आप किस कैटेगरी में डालोगे? Quickly answer. Greed.
Fire.
Fire.
Fire. Conflict. Conflict.
Fire.
Yes.
Fire.
Again, fire. Insensitivity.
Ice.
Ice.
Yes. Avarice.
Fire.
Fire.
Fire. Fury.
Fire.
Fire.
Ice.
Fire. Fury.
Ice.
Fury जो है furious nature, it relates to fire. Coldness.
Ice.
Yes, definitely it's
Ice.
ice. Cruelty. Cruelty.
Ice.
Ice. Because
Ice.
yes, ice gives birth to hatred. Hatred results in cruelty. Intolerance.
Fire.
Fire. Fire. Yes, of course. Indifference.
Ice.
Ice. Lust.
Ice.
Fire.
Fire.
Lust is fire. Rigidity.
Ice.
Ice.
Correct. Ice. And hatred.
Ice.
Ice. Yes, of course. Hatred. Ice. Okay, so you must mark these words clearly. You should have clear understanding what is fire symbolic of and what is ice symbolic of. Right, students? Last one, what is the rhyme scheme of the poem? Abhi abhi मैंने आपको बताया था. Can anybody name it? What is the rhyme scheme?
A,
Quickly.
A, B, C, B, C.
A, C, A.
Repeat it again.
A, B, A.
Yes.
A, B, C,
Yes.
A, C, A.
No, B, C, B. A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. Please note it down. लिख लीजिए. A, B, A, B, C, B, C, B. ठीक है? जी.
Yes, ma'am.
How does it help in bringing out the contrasting ideas in the poem? how this rhyme scheme has actually helped in bringing out the contrasting ideas in the poem. How will you explain it? Hurry up quickly. You just have to explain that how these rhyme scheme has just enhanced the way of expressing ideas. How the usage of fire and ice and the rhyme scheme put in between the lines has actually given a very powerful impact on the readers. It has actually successfully provided an impact on the readers, right? And thus, how the poet has explained that the fire in the first line rhymes with desire, then fire in the third line and fourth lines, how it rhymes, right? And how the ice rhymes with twice. So this way, an impact is created. So you will cite these examples: fire rhyming with desire and ice rhyming with suffice. So that way, hate with great. So ये जो impact create हो रहा है कि fire कैसे desire को relate कर रही है, ice कैसे relate कर रही है suffice को, कैसे ये hate को जन्म देती है, and it is how it is sufficient enough that it will cause destruction. So एक बहुत गहरा impact create हो रहा है इन rhyme schemes से, जो readers को सोचने के लिए मजबूर कर रही हैं, right? So it is actually creating that impact on the readers that they are forced to think about the, we can say, the theme that the poet has discussed in the poem. See how just few lines are there, a few lines are there, and how impactful these lines are. How beautifully and wonderfully, powerfully the poet has explained what he wanted to convey to the readers. That how these emotions, they have the ability of creating havoc, creating destruction, creating a chaos in the world, that it can even bring to the end of the humanity. And he leaves it to the readers that how it is important that we should be saved from these emotions of fire and ice. So I hope the poem is clear to you all, students. If there is any other doubts, you can ask, you can share your doubts with me so that I can solve it.